Wait, her husband didn't fake love. He faked her pregnancy and scheduled her death. Elena thought she was carrying Victor's baby. In reality, he had been drugging her, forging her future, and counting down to the perfect accident that would hand him her empire. But the real insanity. The broken wife he thought he had sedated into obedience became the one person ruthless enough to destroy him. And just when the revenge looks complete, the story reveals an even darker monster waiting behind the curtain.
Outside her husband's study, Elena Moretti was a ghost. Her hand fused to a doorknob she could no longer turn. Through that sliver of darkness, Victor's voice flowed, cool, methodical, as he finalized the date she was to die. In her purse, the positive pregnancy test that had ignited a fragile hope only an hour before now felt like a tombstone, because inside that room they were laughing at the ease of the deception, her business, her body, her very existence. It was all a negotiation where she was the only one who didn't know the terms. And the deepest cut, she had loved him through every single lie. If you want to witness how they forge a monster from the heart of a good woman, stay with me through the storm. Go ahead and hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. That October evening, the sky wept over Boston, a torrent that made the old cobblestones gleam like obsidian traps. Elena Moretti became one with the shadows of the townhouse, a coat soaked through to the skin, her breaths coming in ragged little bursts that had nothing to do with the chill. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was meant to be across the river in Cambridge, enduring another meal where her sister Maria would probe gently about the shadows under her eyes. The weight she'd shed, the tremor in her hands when she thought no one was watching. But Elena had left her medication behind. Those small white pills Victor placed on her nightstand each morning. The ones meant to quiet her fraying nerves. Dr. Hammond had prescribed them 6 months ago, just after the world began to spin around her. Victor had been a portrait of concern back then, ensuring she took every dose without fail. So she'd navigated the storm-swept streets back home, used the side door, and left a trail of rain up the quiet servant's stairs. The bottle was right where he always left it. It was on her way out that the voices bled from Victor's study, a room that should have been silent. He'd told her he was working late, finalizing the Castellano merger. He had pressed a kiss to her brow that very morning, told her to take it easy, and reminded her about those pills. Yet that was unmistakably his voice, joined by another. Marco, she guessed. Victor's head of security, the man with a pale scar bisecting one eye and knuckles that knew the art of breaking things. A wiser woman would have fled, would have swallowed her pills, returned to Maria's and erased this moment from her memory. Instead, Elena drifted closer. The study door was solid oak, a relic from the 1890s. It was always sealed shut, but tonight a crack remained, an inch of betrayal. Just enough. The timing is critical. Victor's voice cut through, crisp and absolute. He always had that tone when solving a complex equation. Elena once found that certainty intoxicating. A day sooner, and the inheritance clauses fail to activate. A day later, and the board starts asking pointed questions. What about the sister? Marco's voice was a low growl of gravel. Maria's been circling, asking Elena if she's well, if she's in need of anything. Maria is a non-issue. She has zero legal standing with Moretti Shipping. Once Elena is gone, it all transfers to me, the grieving spouse. We have been through this. The world began to fray at the edges of Elena's sight. The pill bottle slipped, a silent fall she caught just before it could betray her presence. Her hands trembled so violently she nearly fumbled it again. And the pregnancy? A third voice, younger, laced with doubt. What if they decide to check? There is no pregnancy. Victor stated it as if he were noting the weather. Dr. Hammond has confirmed the HCG injections performed flawlessly. Elena has been exhibiting all the correct symptoms for 8 weeks. The nausea, the exhaustion, the emotional swings. By the time it occurs to anyone to ask, it will be irrelevant. The floor seemed to drop away beneath Elena's feet. 8 weeks. 8 weeks since she'd woken up so sick and Victor had been there, so tenderly holding her hair back. He had taken her to Dr. Hammond himself, waiting patiently while they ran the tests. She had wept at the news, wept with a desperate relief that it could finally happen, wept at the thought that she and Victor might at last build the family she had ached for, the kind her parents had given her before the crash that stole them away. Victor had held her close that night, stroking her hair, whispering that their life was about to be perfect. The pills keep her compliant. That was Marco again, more than compliant. She's docile. Between the sedatives and the hormones, she's in a perpetual fog. It simplified matters immensely. A quiet laugh echoed in the room. Elena thought it belonged to the younger man. She really doesn't suspect a thing. Elena has never suspected anything. Victor's tone was now sharpened with a contempt that constricted Elena's lungs. It was her defining quality. Sweet, naive Elena Moretti, barely 24 years old, orphaned at 22, and burdened with the shipping empire she was utterly incapable of managing. The board members, her father's old associates, were sharks smelling blood. She was desperate for a savior to make the brutal choices. And you were more than willing to step in, Marco observed. I was pragmatic. Enzo Moretti bled for 40 years to build his legacy. His daughter would have squandered it in 6 months. Our marriage served us both, except she believes you adore her. Elena believes what I require her to believe, and she has believed it for 2 years. 2 years of playing the loving husband, a performance that reaches its climax in 3 weeks. Elena's spine found the cold wall. She hadn't realized she was moving until she was sliding down, her legs failing her. The pill bottle escaped her grasp for good, rolling silently across the dark wood. The only sounds were the storm raging outside and the furious drumming of her own heart. 3 weeks, the younger voice echoed. Are you certain of the plan? A car crash, Victor stated. She's been on those pills for months. Her reflexes are gone. All you need is a rainy night, a sharp curve on Starro Drive, perhaps a minor mechanical issue. Marco's team will arrange the particulars. And if they investigate, there will be no investigation. The story writes itself. A pregnant, unstable Elena Moretti loses control of her car in a storm, a tragedy. I will be inconsolable, of course. The media will devour it. Shipping heiress perishes in a horrific accident. Husband vows to carry on her legacy. I will have Moretti shipping folded into the Moretti Castellano group inside of a month. The Castellanos are in agreement? Antonio Castellano has been in agreement from the very start. In fact, this was his design. He needed our Atlantic shipping lanes. I needed the company. Elena was simply the price of admission for us both. The younger man let out a low whistle. That's cold. It's business, Victor corrected him. It was never personal. Elena clamped a hand over her mouth, fighting the bile that rose in her throat, choking back the scream that was tearing its way out. Never personal. 2 years. 2 years of a shared bed, of believing his touch held meaning, that his words were truth. 2 years of shrinking herself into the quiet, soft wife he wanted, less and less a part of the company her father had died for. And every second of it was just the prelude to her murder. There was no pregnancy. The child she had carried in her heart, the future she had planned, was an illusion. The pills she took so faithfully, believing they were her remedy, were her poison. They were just another tool to make her more manageable, easier to dispose of. 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, Victor would place her behind the wheel of a car and ensure she died in it. "When do we transfer the papers?" Marco asked. "Tomorrow. I need Elena's signature on the revised will, the one making me the sole beneficiary and executor. She'll sign it. She signs anything I place in front of her now." It was the devastating truth. Elena could not recall the last time she'd read a document before signing. Victor would always murmur about routine paperwork, estate details, dull legal necessities, and her trust in him had been absolute. The pills left her so weary, everything felt shrouded in fog, and it was so much simpler to just smile and put her name where he indicated. She had signed her own death warrant, and she had thanked him for it. "And if she doesn't?" the younger voice questioned. "Sign, that is. She will. But if by some chance she refuses, we have other options." The schedule becomes more complicated, but the outcome is the same. One way or another, Moretti Shipping is mine by year's end. Elena's fingers brushed against the pill bottle where it had come to rest. She closed her hand around it. The prescription read lorazepam for anxiety, to be taken for panic attacks. Except she'd never suffered a panic attack until 6 months ago. She had been navigating the company, the fresh wound of her parents' deaths, the immense pressure from the board. She had been exhausted, certainly, but she had been coping. Then Victor suggested she talk to someone, Dr. Hammond, his close friend, someone who could help her. The pills began, the fog descended, and Elena Moretti vanished piece by agonizing piece until a stranger stared back at her from the mirror. "She's upstairs now?" the young man asked. "No, she's having dinner with her sister. She won't return until very late." The groan of Victor's chair broke the silence as he rose to his feet. Just enough time, he mentioned, to review the Castellano agreements again, Antonio's obsession with the rote divisions after the merger. Footsteps echoed, moving towards the study door. Elena scrambled up, her legs trembling, a tremor running through her entire frame. She hurried, faster than she had in months, for the servants' staircase. Behind her, the study door swung open. "Marco, have the car ready. Our meeting with Antonio at the club is in an hour." "Understood, sir." Elena reached the landing, melting back into the darkness as she heard them moving through the house below. Victor's footsteps were confident, a familiar rhythm of ownership with Marco's heavier tread just behind. The front door opened, then shut. An engine rumbled to life in the drive, and then a profound quiet. Elena waited, counting to 100, then 200. Certain they were gone, she descended the stairs on legs that felt alien to her. She returned to the study, pushing the door wide. The air was thick with Victor's cologne and the scent of old leather. His desk was a massive mahogany throne covered in orderly piles of paper and a laptop, certainly password protected. The walls held books he would never read and photos from their wedding day. Elena, radiant in white, smiling as if she still believed in fantasies. Victor beside her, hand possessively on her waist, his smile a perfect mask. She stared at the photograph for a long, quiet moment, before turning to the desk drawers. The first 3 were securely locked. The fourth, however, slid open. Inside were files, their tabs bearing names she knew: Moretti Shipping, Castellana Group, and others that were foreign to her. She laid them out across the desk's surface: projections of revenue, merger schedules, plans for route acquisitions. And there, buried beneath it all, was a folder labeled simply E.M. Estate. Elena opened it. Within were documents she had signed over the last 6 months. A new will, a power of attorney, agreements of transfer, page after page marked with her own hand. Each signature was a nail in her coffin, legally binding. Each one had methodically stripped away another piece of her autonomy. At the very bottom lay a document she had not yet signed, the one Victor had spoken of, the final will, naming him the sole inheritor of everything she possessed. A small sticky note was attached. Have E. sign by October 15th. Today was the 8th of October, 1 week. He had been arranging to secure her signature in just 1 week. Elena collapsed into Victor's chair, the leather still holding the warmth of the man who had just been discussing her death. She stared at the papers, at her own name, at the life she thought was hers. It was all a carefully constructed lie. Every single kiss, every touch, every whispered vow. The way he had proposed at her parents' funeral, promising she would never have to face the world by herself. The way he had assumed control of company meetings when grief left her unable to think. The way he had assured her the pills were making her better. That Dr. Hammond was a good man, that it would all be all right. Deceptions, all of it. Elena noticed her hands were no longer shaking. The tremor, a constant companion for months that had left her feeling frail and lost, had vanished. She gazed at the pill bottle in her hand, then rose, walked to the private bathroom, and emptied every last tablet into the toilet. She watched them spiral down into the water, flushing them away just as they had intended to flush her away. The woman in the mirror seemed altered, her features sharper. The fog in her mind was already clearing, or perhaps it was something more. Perhaps it was the cold realization of exactly where she stood. A dead woman walking. That's who she was, and had been for months, maybe even longer. But she was not gone yet. Elena returned to the study, took out her phone, and captured images of every document in that file. Every signature, every clause, every piece of proof detailing how Victor had systematically dismantled her life. She then restored everything to its original place. By the time she finished, her hands were steady, her thoughts clearer than they had been in half a year. She locked his study, went upstairs to the bedroom she shared with her husband, and packed a single bag. She took only clothing, cash, and her passport, leaving the jewels Victor had gifted her. The credit cards were tied to accounts he monitored. She took her mother's wedding band, the only piece of her parents she kept with her, and she took the bottle of prenatal vitamins from the nightstand, the ones Dr. Hammond had prescribed for a pregnancy that never was. Elena paused in the doorway, looking back at the life she was abandoning. The king-size bed with its silk sheets. The walk-in closet filled with outfits Victor had approved. The vanity where she sat each morning, swallowing the pills that kept her docile. How foolish she had been. How trusting. Not anymore. Elena switched off the lights and walked out. She drove to a hotel on the other side of the city, paid for a room in cash, and left her phone off. She sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself to feel everything. The sting of betrayal, the searing rage, and the deep, chilling terror of how close she had come to death without ever understanding why. Then she opened her laptop and began to search for a name. Adrian Keller, Victor's chief rival, the man who had been attempting to acquire Moretti Shipping right before Victor appeared with a marriage proposal, the one Victor had outwitted, humiliated, and defeated. If any man alive wanted to witness Victor Moretti's ruin, it was Adrian Keller. Elena located his company's website, Keller Maritime. Based in New York, import-export, shipping lines spanning Europe and Asia, smaller than Moretti Shipping, but expanding. She discovered his email address in a press release dated 3 years prior, and then, at 2 a.m, as rain lashed against the hotel windows and her entire world lay in ruins, Elena Moretti composed a message to a man she had never met. Mr. Keller, my name is Elena Moretti. In 3 weeks, my husband plans to murder me and seize my company. I have evidence. If you have any interest in destroying him, meet with me tomorrow. I will show you everything. E.M. She sent the email before doubt could stop her. Then she lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and waited for the remnants of her old life to burn away. By morning, Adrian Keller had replied. The message was brief. An address in South Boston and a time, 2 p.m. Elena arrived early. The warehouse was precisely the sort of place that would have filled her with dread just a week ago. Crumbling brick, shattered windows, the air tasting of salt water and rust. She parked in the deserted lot, took the folder of photographs she had printed at an all-night copy center, and stepped inside. Adrian Keller was waiting in what had likely once been an office. His back was to her as he gazed out a grimy window overlooking the harbor. Mrs. Moretti. He didn't turn. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly desperate. Both, Elena replied. Her answer made him face her. He was younger than she had imagined, perhaps 35, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. He wore a suit that likely cost more than her car, and he regarded her like a complex problem he intended to solve. You mentioned you have proof. Elena let the folder fall onto the rusted desk between them. Everything. Documents detailing his asset transfers, a statement from the doctor who fabricated my pregnancy, financials connecting him to the Castellano Group. He's planning to stage an accident 3 weeks from now, perhaps sooner. Adrian took the folder, leafing through the pages. His face remained a mask, but a flicker of something showed in his eyes. It could have been interest or calculation. Why bring this to me? Because you despise him, Elena stated plainly. Because he stole something from you, and now he is trying to steal everything from me. Because I did my homework last night, and you are the only one with the motive and the means to help me. Help you to do what exactly? Ruin him! Elena's voice was firm. Take it all. His business, his name, his liberty. I want him to lose everything just as he planned for me. Adrian put the folder down. And what is my reward in this? Moretti Shipping. Once Victor is gone and I regain control, I will sell it to you. Half of its market value. You have coveted those Atlantic routes for years. Now they can be yours. That is an exceptionally generous offer. It is an equitable exchange. You help me stay alive. I give you what you have always desired. Adrian watched her for a long moment. Elena forced herself to hold his gaze, to not flinch, to not betray the fear that still simmered beneath her anger. You realize what you are asking, he said at last. This is not a simple corporate hostile takeover. Your husband has powerful friends. The Castellanos, for starters. They will not allow their investment to simply vanish without a fight. I am aware you will have to return to that house, to him, and play the part of the loving wife while we assemble our case. Can you manage that? Elena remembered the pills swirling in the toilet, the fog dissipating, the woman she had been for 2 years, soft, naive, and half asleep. That woman was dead. Yes, she confirmed, I can manage that. Adrian smiled then, a smile that should have served as a dire warning. In that case, we have an agreement, Mrs. Moretti. Welcome to the game. He offered his hand. Elena took it. A tiny voice in the back of her mind whispered that she had just exchanged one demon for another. But that was a concern for another day. For now she had a husband to deceive and a life to reclaim. The preparations began, taking 3 days. Adrian was swift and methodical. His reach was something Elena had never foreseen. He had lawyers, investigators, men who could unearth secrets that were meant to be entombed. Within 48 hours, they held more than just photographs of her. They had financial records exposing Victor's gambling habits from before they were married. They had messages between him and Antonio Castellano concerning the Moretti affair. They had a record of the hormone purchases used to simulate her pregnancy. Dr. Hammond, as it happened, was not a licensed therapist at all. He was a physician's assistant who had been stripped of his New York credentials for prescription fraud. Victor had been paying him in cash for 2 years. Your husband is careless, Adrian noted during one of their sessions. They had relocated from the warehouse to a sterile office in his high-rise, a world away from the gritty spaces Elena had occupied for days. Conceited, he was certain you would never challenge him. I didn't, Elena replied softly, not until I heard him arrange for my death. That is about to change. Adrian pushed a small box over the desk. Your new phone, secure. It is for me, and me alone. Your personal phone must remain powered on in use. Victor cannot suspect you have disappeared. Elena took the phone. What of the signature he requires for the will? You are going to provide it. What? We require him to feel secure. If you resist, he will suspect something is amiss. He will either accelerate his schedule or alter his methods. But if you sign, if you play your part flawlessly, he will believe victory is his. That is when a man grows reckless. A knot of dread tightened in Elena's stomach. The thought of endorsing that paper, of affixing her signature to her own death warrant. I know this is hard, Adrian said, his voice surprisingly gentle. But this is strategy. We are not permitting him to harm you, Elena. We are permitting him to think he can. There's a world of difference. And if he deviates, if he moves ahead of our predictions, then you contact me. Adrian's gaze held hers. Any hour, day or night, you are no longer facing this alone. The assurance should have been a comfort. Instead, it felt like another kind of cage was closing in. But Elena gave a nod, as there was no other choice. She returned to their home that night. Victor was in his study when she walked in, documents covering his desk. He glanced up, his expression morphing into the smile she once mistook for warmth. Elena, I was beginning to worry. Maria said you had gone hours ago. I went for a drive, Elena said, her voice faint, unsure. The Elena she once was. I had to clear my thoughts. Are you feeling well? You seem pale. Just fatigued. The baby. She stopped, her hand drifting to her belly in the automatic gesture she had practiced for weeks. I think I should go lie down. Victor rose and rounded the desk, placing his hands on her shoulders. Elena fought the instinct to recoil. You have been straining yourself, he said. I am always telling you to rest. I know you're right. She let herself lean into his embrace, breathing in the cologne she had once loved, a scent that now made her want to gag. I am sorry for being so much trouble. You are no trouble at all. He kissed the crown of her head. You're my wife. It is my job to look after you. The lie slipped out so naturally, so perfectly smooth. Ilona pulled away with a weak smile. I should have my pill. I forgot to take it this morning. A flicker of something crossed Victor's features. Approval, perhaps. I put them on the nightstand. Be sure you have something to eat. I will. She ascended the stairs, locked herself inside the bathroom, and dry heaved over the bowl until her sides ached. She then splashed water on her face, met her own gaze in the mirror, and whispered, 3 weeks. She could endure this for 3 weeks. She sent the pill down the drain, flushing it after the others, and went downstairs to give the performance of a lifetime. The subsequent 2 weeks were an exhibition in the art of deceit. Elena smiled when Victor demanded it. She signed the will he presented, her hand shaking with just enough authenticity, and she observed his quiet satisfaction as he put it away. She endured dinners with the Castellanos, remaining silent while Antonio and Victor talked of shipping lanes and revenue. The perfect doting wife with no mind for business. The nights were for Adrian. They gathered evidence, constructed the legal framework, and traced every person in Victor's web, every hidden account, every fabricated story. Adrian's attorneys prepared papers that would strip Victor of his assets the instant Elena gave the signal. The timing is critical, Adrian cautioned during a late meeting. If we strike too soon, he will tie this up in court for years. Too late, and you are gone. We must find the perfect opening. Which is when? When he is certain he has won. When his defenses are completely gone. Elena saw the logic. It was the very tactic Victor employed on her. Lull the prey into a false calm, then deliver the blow when they least expect it. She was becoming just like him. The realization should have filled her with horror. Instead, it felt like gaining power. There is something else, Adrian mentioned one night, a week before the scheduled accident. They were in his office again, with the city lights spread far below them. Something you must grasp. What is it? When this concludes, when Victor is finished and you reclaim your company, you will not be the one to run it. Elena froze. What are you talking about? You are 24 years old. You have no experience, no preparation. The board has little respect for you, even with Victor manipulating them. Once he is gone and this becomes public, they will tear you to pieces. So what is my option? Simply give it all to you. That was our agreement. The agreement was for me to sell to you, not to simply vanish. Adrian leaned back, observing her. You have changed since we first met in that warehouse. You are more formidable now. I stopped ingesting the pills that made me a ghost. Of course I am. It is more than just that. He rose, walking to the window. You have rage. Good. Wield it, but do not let it obscure reality. Moretti shipping requires a steady hand at the helm. That is not you. Not for now. His words stung with the weight of truth. Elena had spent 2 years as a figurehead, managed and directed, the heiress who signed on the dotted line. She understood nothing of leading a global shipping firm, but she could be taught. After, she replied, after Victor is handled, I will address it then. Adrian turned, and an unease settled over her at his expression. Fair enough. They returned to their plans, but the conversation lingered. A reminder that even with Victor gone, she would only be trading one keeper for another. But survival had to come first. The night before the staged event, Elena found no rest. She lay beside Victor, hearing him breathe, pondering if he dreamt of her funeral, of the statements he would make, the false tears he would shed, the empire he would inherit. At 3 a.m, she slipped out of bed and went downstairs. The house was still and black. She lingered in the kitchen, her eyes fixed on the garden her mother had once tended, now a wild and neglected space. The encrypted phone buzzed. "Are you ready for what comes tomorrow?" It was Adrian. Elena typed her reply. "As ready as I will ever be. Remember, you are the one in charge. He believes he is the hunter. He is blind to the fact that you are the one who has set the trap." She set the phone down and went back to their bed. Victor moved as she slid beneath the blankets. "Can't sleep?" "No." Elena allowed her voice to tremble, to sound afraid. "I am having terrible dreams." "About what?" "Dying." Victor enfolded her in his arms, and she felt his smile in her hair. "You are not going to die, Elena. I give you my word." The falsehood was so casual, so easy. Elena shut her eyes and counted down the hours until this would all be finished. For better or worse. The morning arrived far too quickly. Elena awoke to find Victor already dressed, fixing his tie in the reflection. He saw her watching and offered the smile she now knew was a performance. "A significant day," he said. "The Castellano deals are being concluded. I expect to be done by 6 o'clock. Then we can have a quiet dinner, just us." "That sounds lovely," Elena replied, sitting up with deliberate fragility. "I have my appointment with Dr. Hammond at 2 o'clock. "Of course, the checkup." Victor approached the bed, kissing her forehead. "Call me afterward. Tell me how you and our baby are." The baby who did not exist. The appointment that was surely a piece of the puzzle he needed for his accident claim. Elena nodded, saw him depart, heard his steps on the stairs, the door shutting, his car driving off. Then she took out the secure phone. Adrian responded on the averse ring. "He has just left?" "Yes, he thinks I have a medical appointment at 2 o'clock. "Perfect. That gives us the entire afternoon. Marco is already in place. We have him under surveillance. The second he connects with his mechanic, we will have all the proof we need." Yelena's hands clenched the phone. "And if things do not go as planned?" "Nothing will go wrong. Have faith in me." Faith. The word was shattered for her now, but she had no alternative. She got dressed and drove to the office building where Adrian waited. It was not his usual location, but a neutral space. A law office in the financial district. The type of place with abundant security and witnesses. Adrian was there upon her arrival with 2 individuals she did not know. A woman in her 50s with penetrating eyes and a tailored suit, and a younger man with a laptop who looked like he lived in a world of data. "Elena, this is Margaret Chen, my lead counsel, and Paul Reeves, our forensic accountant." Adrian gestured toward the chairs round a looming table. They would outline the coming storm. Elena sat. A tempest raged within her, a knot in her stomach, a frantic rhythm in her veins, yet her expression was a calm, placid sea. Margaret began. "We have a complete case against Victor. Fraud, conspiracy, the attempt on your life." The proof, she said, was ironclad, but they had to be surgical in their attack. "What does that mean?" It meant they would sidestep the law entirely. Victor had influence. The Castellanos, a dynasty. Going through official channels meant watching evidence get buried and witnesses forget. So, what is our move? Paul opened his computer, turning the screen to face Elena. On it, a dizzying web of transactions and ledgers spun before her eyes. We go public, he announced, not to the authorities, but to the board of Moretti Shipping. They would expose Victor to the only people he truly respected, his peers. They would incinerate his reputation before he could spin a single lie. And then he is a man with nothing left, Margaret said, her tone flat. Which makes him unpredictable, which is why you must be somewhere secure. Elena shook her head. No, I will be there. I have to watch his world crumble when he learns it was me. Adrian leaned closer. Elena. She met his gaze, her voice now like ice. I need to be there. He tried to steal my company, my life. I am not going to hide while others fight my war. Silence descended upon the room. Margaret and Paul exchanged a look. Adrian's gaze on Elena was a cipher she couldn't solve. Very well, he finally conceded. You will be present, but you follow our direction precisely, no improvisation. The instant it feels unstable, you walk away. Agreed. Agreed. Margaret produced a new file. Then the timeline. An emergency board meeting is set for next week, called by you, the majority shareholder. Victor knows nothing of it. How did you... I forced the meeting, Adrian cut in, using proxy votes I've spent the last 6 months securing. From minority shareholders who were losing faith in Victor. It wasn't enough for a takeover, but it was enough to compel a meeting. Elena stared at him, the scope of his planning settling in. You've been preparing this for 6 months. I have been preparing since the day your husband usurped what should have been mine, Adrian stated, his voice devoid of all warmth. Your crisis simply created the perfect opening. There it was. Not a rescue, but an opportunity. Adrian's vengeance had been waiting for a weapon, and Elena had become it. A truth she already knew. What about tonight? She asked. Victor expects me to have a car accident. Let him, Paul said, pulling up a new image on his screen. Grainy footage from a traffic camera. We have eyes on Marco. The second he makes contact with the mechanic hired to rig your car, we record everything. Tonight you will not drive. You will use our car service. If Victor asks you felt ill, a precaution for the baby. He will be suspicious. Perhaps, but his arrogance is his blind spot. A 1-day delay will not alter his course. It will merely force him to recalculate. Elena wanted to believe it, to trust that his ego would be his own undoing. But she had trusted him once, a lifetime ago, and the scars remained. The meeting continued for another hour, a meticulous dance through contingencies and backup strategies. By the time she left, Elena's head was pounding, her hands trembling once more. This was not a tremor from the pills, but from the sheer weight of what was to come. She drove to the house and sat in the driveway, a long, quiet moment before she could face the door. The home was now a museum of her own foolishness. Every room held a memory now poisoned. The kitchen where Victor had feigned joy over a child that wasn't real. The bedroom where he had woven a tapestry of lies. The study where he had plotted her death. Upstairs, she changed her clothes and waited. At 6:30, Victor came home. She heard the door, his footsteps searching for her through the house. She stayed in the bedroom, a silhouette by the window, seeing nothing. Elena, he was in the doorway. Are you all right? Just tired. She did not turn. The appointment was long. Is everything okay with the baby? Dr. Hammond says everything is fine. I just need to rest. She could feel his tension ease, could hear him cross the room, could feel his hand on her shoulder. I'm glad. I worry about you. The lie was so fluid, so utterly natural to him. Elena turned, looked into his eyes, and let hers well with tears. I love you. You know that, don't you? Victor's face softened, or perhaps it was just a different mask falling into place. I know. I love you too. He drew her into an embrace, and Elena closed her eyes, imagining all the ways she would watch him burn. I don't feel well enough to drive tonight, she whispered into his chest. Can we please just order in? Of course, whatever you need. It was perfect, just as Paul had said it would be. They ate Thai food in the living room while a movie played that Elena would never remember. Victor's gaze kept flicking to his phone, awaiting the news from Marco that her car was now a death trap. But the message he waited for would never arrive. Because Marco was being watched, documented, recorded, every text, every call, every move was another nail in the coffin they were building for Victor. At 10 o'clock, Elena faked a yawn. I think I'll go to bed. I'll be up soon, just have to clear some emails. She went to her room, locked the door, and took out the encrypted phone. Status, she sent to Adrian. The reply came back instantly. Marco made contact at 4:47 p.m. Mechanic confirmed payment. We have video, audio, financial transaction. It's done. Elena sat on the bed, the words glowing in the dark. It's done. She finally had it. Undeniable proof that her husband had paid for her death. Relief should have been a tidal wave. Instead, all she felt was an Arctic cold. Board meeting is set for Friday, came Adrian's next message. 3 days. Can you maintain this for that long? 3 days of this performance. 3 nights sleeping beside a man who wanted her dead. 3 days of a role she had perfected over 2 long years. Yes, she typed. I can do 3 days. Good. Get some rest. You're going to need it. Elena put the phone away and slid beneath the covers. An hour later, Victor came to bed. He wrapped an arm around her waist as he always did, pulling her close as if he truly cared. Elena lay there in the dark, her eyes wide open, counting down the hours until Friday. The following 3 days were a blur, a strange, suspended moment in time. Elena drifted through the house like a specter, playing her part with a chilling precision. She returned Victor's smiles. She ate what he offered. She took the fake prenatal pills and feigned rest while he worked. And each night, after his breathing deepened into sleep, she conferred with Adrian's team. They ran through her statement for the board, rehearsing her tone, her timing, the exact second she would unleash the evidence that would bring her husband to ruin. Margaret coached her to remain detached, to let strategy conquer emotion. He is going to react, Margaret warned her, and it will be vicious. He will try to paint you as unstable, use pills against you. You must be prepared for that. I'm ready. Are you? Adrian's voice cut across the room. Because when you walk into that boardroom, there is no turning back. Victor will know you betrayed him. The Castellanos will know. You'll be putting a target on your back that will never disappear, even if we win. Elena met his stare. I already have a target on my back. At least this way, I'm the one holding the gun. Something shifted in Adrian's expression, a flicker of approval, or maybe kinship. Then don't miss, he said. Thursday night, Victor came home late. He found Elena in the study, at his desk, sifting through the company files he'd left behind. She had been there every night, reacquainting herself with the empire her father had built, the kingdom she'd allowed to slip away while lost in a medicated haze. Elena. He stood in the doorway, his surprise plain to see. What are you doing? Reading. She glanced up, her voice light. I realized I know nothing about this company anymore. I thought it was time to fix that. Victor entered the room slowly, his movements cautious, as if approaching an unpredictable animal. You should be resting. The baby is fine, and I'm tired of being useless. Elena stood, gathering the files. My father spent his entire life building this. I should at least know what he created. For a fleeting moment, something crossed his face. Uncertainty, the first whisper of true suspicion. Then he smiled. Of course. I think that's wonderful. I can help if you'd like. Explain some of the more complex parts. That's all right. I would rather figure it out myself. She walked past him, the documents clutched in her hands, and felt his eyes burn into her back the whole way up the stairs. That night, Victor did not sleep. Elena could feel him beside her, wide awake, his mind racing, trying to calculate what had changed. Let the uncertainty consume him, she mused. Let him taste the same bitter dread she had been forced to swallow. Friday dawned beneath a weeping slate-gray sky. Elena armored herself in a navy suit that had belonged to her mother, the one piece of her old life she'd salvaged from the haze of pills and the slow erosion of her soul. Hair-pinned, makeup a whisper, pearl earrings like small, hard truths. She was an heiress, not a pretty ornament. Victor was already downstairs. He glanced at her, his brow furrowing. You look sharp. Any plans? A board meeting, she replied, her voice smooth as she poured coffee. An emergency session. Did I forget to mention it? A stillness fell over Victor. No, you did not. My mistake. It was a last-minute affair. A few minority shareholders got spooked about the quarterly projections. She sipped her coffee, her eyes watching him over the cup's rim. It's likely nothing. Who requested the meeting? I'm not entirely sure. Margaret Chen's office contacted mine yesterday, called it urgent. A muscle in Victor's jaw leaped. Margaret Chen is counsel for Adrian Keller. Is that so? I had no idea. Elena placed her cup down. Is that a problem? No, not at all. But he was already turning away, his phone in hand, his voice a low, frantic hiss as he made his calls, desperate to learn what was unfolding. Elena drank her coffee, took her bag, and walked to the door. Elena! Victor's hand shot out, grabbing her arm. I'll go with you. That isn't necessary. I'm going. His grip was a vice, promising a bruise. Elena's gaze dropped to his hand, then lifted to his face, where she saw something she'd never seen before. Not the mask, not the performance. She saw fear. Very well, she said, her voice a quiet surrender. We'll go together. The drive was a silent war, his knuckles white on the steering wheel as Elena watched the rain-slicked city slide by. Ahead, the Moretti shipping tower loomed, a monument of glass and steel, her father's legacy made tangible. The boardroom was on the highest floor. She had only been there once since her father passed, for the meeting that crowned Victor, acting CEO. She'd been a silent shadow in the corner as old men decided the fate of her birthright. But not today. The room was tense, already filled with the board members, men in costly suits who had known her since childhood. Antonio Castellano, a silver-haired shark, sat at the table's far end. Adrian Keller stood by the windows, a silhouette against the storm. His head turned as Elena entered, and their eyes locked for a heartbeat. Then she strode to the head of the table, to her father's seat, and watched Victor's expression curdle as he understood. Margaret Chen rose. "Thank you for assembling so quickly." This meeting was convened by Elena Moretti, the majority shareholder and rightful CEO of Moretti Shipping, to discuss grave concerns regarding corporate governance and fiduciary duty. Victor was on his feet in an instant. "This is a farce. Elena is in no condition to—" "I am in precisely the condition I need to be." Elena's voice cut through, clear and cold. "This is my company, my father's, and I possess evidence of your systematic fraud against it for the past 2 years. Chaos erupted. Voices rose in a cacophony. Antonio Castellanos' face darkened, and Victor's voice sliced through the noise. "This is madness. Elena, you're unwell. The stress of the pregnancy—" "There is no pregnancy." A silence fell, as sharp and final as a blade. Elena stood, opened the folder she carried, and began sliding copies down the long, polished table. "Victor has been paying a disgraced doctor to inject me with hormones that mimic the symptoms of pregnancy. His goal was to portray me as emotionally volatile, easier to control, and eventually easier to remove. That is a monstrous lie." Victor's voice was like iron. "Elena has been on prescribed anxiety medication. Dr. Stephen Hammond lost his license to practice in New York 3 years ago for prescription fraud." Margaret's voice interjected cleanly. "We have proof of cash payments from Victor Moretti to this man, starting the month after their wedding. We also have audio of Victor detailing his plan to murder his wife and seize her inheritance." She tapped a key, and Victor's own voice filled the room. "A car accident? She's been on those pills. Her reflexes are shot. A rainy night, a bad turn, a touch of mechanical failure is all it will take." Elena watched the blood drain from her husband's face. Pregnant, unstable Elena Moretti loses control of her car in a storm. A tragedy, utterly heartbreaking. Antonio Castellanos stood with a jolt. "How did you obtain this?" "From the source," Adrian said from the window, in his own study, plotting a murder as if it were a quarterly report. The mask on Victor's face shattered completely. He turned on Elena, revealing the cold, furious predator beneath. "You recorded me. You betrayed me. You were going to have me killed." Elena's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of steel. "You faked a child, you drugged me, and you scheduled my death. So yes, I recorded you. I documented it all. And now this entire room knows what you are. You have no idea the damage you've done," Victor seethed, his hands trembling. "The Castellano merger is predicated on fraud and attempted murder," Margaret cut in. "That renders it void. It also exposes all involved parties to charges of conspiracy." Antonio's eyes narrowed. "This is a setup. Keller arranged all of this." "I didn't need to arrange a thing," Adrian replied. "Victor served me everything I needed the moment he chose murder over divorce. I'm simply here for the bonfire." The room exploded into accusations, the board demanding explanations, Antonio and Victor scrambling for control, while Margaret calmly distributed more proof: bank records, emails, wire transfers. Through the tempest, Elena sat at the head of the table watching the architecture of her husband's life collapse. Security had to clear the room. Victor was led out, still shouting, still weaving his lies. Antonio Castellano left without a sound, phone already pressed to his ear, no doubt summoning his lawyers. The board filed out, stunned and silent, none of them meeting Elena's gaze, until only she, Adrian, and Margaret remained. "Well," Margaret said, snapping her briefcase shut, "that unfolded more or less as we predicted." A tremor started in Elena's hands as the adrenaline finally fled. "What's the next step?" "A police investigation, charges of fraud, attempted murder. Victor will put up a fight, but the evidence against him is a mountain. He will likely accept a plea to stay out of a courtroom. And the company? It reverts to you, full control starting now. The board may protest, but on legal grounds they are standing on sand." Elena nodded, the words struggling to take root. Her company, her father's legacy, hers once more, but the victory felt hollow. Margaret departed, promising updates. Adrian lingered, returning to his post at the window, observing the city below. "You held your nerve in there," he commented. "I wasn't certain you could. Neither was I. But you did. And now you have what you came for." Elena studied him, saw the satisfaction etched on his face, and a familiar chill settled deep in her bones. "What is your price, Adrian?" He turned, his gaze meeting hers. "The price we discussed, Moretti shipping for 50 cents on the dollar. And what if I decline?" "Then you'll be at the helm of a company you don't understand, with a board that holds you in contempt, surrounded by enemies who now know you will annihilate anyone in your path. Victor had many powerful friends, Elena. They won't forgive what happened here today. So I'm to surrender it? Let you claim what my father built? You won't surrender it. You will sell it for a substantial sum. In exchange, I offered the guidance and the shield you will desperately need to weather the storm that is coming." A muscle in Elena's jaw clenched. "You orchestrated this. All of it. You were never saving me. You were positioning yourself for a takeover." "I was doing both," Adrian said, stepping closer. "You were drowning. You still are. This is not the end, Elena. This was only the first move. And if I choose to make my own moves, then you will fail." He said it without malice, as a statement of fact. "You are intelligent. You are vicious when necessary. But you are not prepared for this world. Not on your own." The words were a sting of truth. She had toppled Victor, but only with the weapons Adrian had forged for her. Without his help, she would still be a drugged phantom wife awaiting her arranged death. But she was a quick study. "I need to think," she said. He offered a thin smile. "That is all I ask." He left her there, a solitary queen in an empty throne room, surrounded by a legacy she had reclaimed and a future she could not see. Elena stared out at the city, at the endless rain, and wondered if she had merely escaped one cage to be ushered into another. That night, Elena did not go home. The house she had shared with Victor was now a poisoned place, every room a memory twisted into a lie. She found a downtown hotel instead, an anonymous tower where questions went unasked and cash was accepted with a discreet nod. She sat on the bed's edge, still wearing her mother's suit, and simply stared at her phone. Her screen was a monument to the chaos. 17 calls from Victor's number, 12 from unknown origins, and 3 from Maria, her sister. In the frenzy, Elena had failed to warn her. She dialed back. "Elena! Oh, thank God!" Maria's voice was a thread of pure panic. "I've been trying you for hours. What the hell is happening?" A reporter had contacted her, asking of Victor and allegations of fraud. "It's complicated. Complicated. Elena, they are saying your husband tried to have you killed." Elena closed her eyes against the stark truth. "He did. A chasm of silence opened on the line, then quietly, "I'm coming to you." "Where are you?" "Maria, I'm fine." "Where are you?" Elena relented, providing the hotel address. 20 minutes on, Maria was hammering at the door. She was a perfect echo of their mother. The same dark fall of hair, the same sharp eyes that absorbed every detail. A single look was all it took before Maria pulled her into a crushing, painful hug. "You should have told me," Maria said into her hair. "The very second you knew." "I couldn't. I didn't know who to trust." "Me. You trust me." Maria pulled back, gripping Elena's shoulders with fierce certainty. "Always me. Do you understand?" Elena nodded, feeling a fracture spread through her chest. She had been performing strength for weeks, playing a role. But Maria was real. Maria was a sanctuary. And so she told her everything. The study, the recording, the fake pregnancy, the pills, Adrian's role, the boardroom showdown, and the look on Victor's face as his entire world imploded. Maria absorbed it all without a word, her expression growing thunderous with every detail. "That son of a bitch," she hissed when Elena finished. "I'll kill him myself." "The police have him. Margaret says the charges will stick." "And this Adrian Keller, do you trust him?" Elena hesitated. "I need him." "That is not what I asked." "No," she admitted. "I don't trust him, but he helped when I had no one." Maria's jaw tightened. "At what cost?" "The company. He wants to buy Moretti Shipping." "Oh, absolutely not. Elena, that company is Dad's legacy. It's our legacy. You didn't survive Victor, only to hand it all to another man who wants to use you." "I don't know how to run it." "Victor was right about that much." "Then you learn," Maria countered, grabbing Elena's hands. "You're 24, not dead. You have time to figure it out, and you have me. I may not know shipping lanes, but I know business, and I know when you're being played." Elena wanted to believe her, to imagine she could do this without Adrian's protection, without simply trading one cage for another. But the doubt lingered, whispering that she was in too deep. "Stay with me tonight," she said instead. "I don't want to be alone." Maria nodded. "I'm not going anywhere." They ordered room service, ate terrible pasta, and drank even worse wine. And for a few hours, Elena let herself be just a little sister again. Not a widow, not a chief executive, not a woman who had just engineered her husband's downfall. Just Elena. By midnight, Maria was asleep in the other bed. Elena lay awake, staring at the blank ceiling, trying to map out what came next. Her phone vibrated, the encrypted one. It was Adrian. "We need to talk. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office." Elena stared at the text for a long time before typing back a single word. "Fine." She did not sleep. By morning, the story had detonated. Elena's regular phone was drowning in a flood of notifications. News alerts, social media tags, messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. The news was everywhere. Shipping heiress exposes husband's murder plot. Boston's CEO arrested for fraud and attempted murder. Moretti marriage built on lies and deception. Someone had leaked the recording. Not the entire file, but enough. Victor's voice, calm and cold, discussing her death as if it were a line item in a budget. Elena sat on the floor of the hotel bathroom, scrolling through the articles, watching her life become a public commodity. "You okay?" Maria stood in the doorway, holding a coffee. "They're calling me brave." Elena's voice was flat. "Courageous. A survivor. Like I had a choice." "You did have a choice. You could have run. You chose to fight." "I chose revenge." "Sometimes they're the same thing." Maria handed her the coffee. "What time is your meeting with Keller?" 10. I'm coming with you. That's non-negotiable. You are not facing that man alone. Elena didn't have the will to argue. She showered, dressed in the clean clothes Maria had brought from her apartment, and allowed her sister to drive her to Adrian's building. The office was just as she remembered, sleek, modern, and designed to intimidate. Adrian was waiting in the conference room with Margaret and another man Elena didn't know. He was older, maybe 60, with a face that looked like it had seen everything and was impressed by none of it. Elena, and you must be Maria. Adrian stood and offered his hand. Maria ignored it. Let's skip the pleasantries. What do you want? Adrian's smile was cold. Direct. I like that. This is James Rutherford, former CEO of Atlantic Maritime. He's agreed to consult on the transition. What transition? Maria's voice was sharp as flint. The sale of Moretti Shipping to Keller Maritime, as Elena and I discussed. Elena isn't selling. Adrian's eyes moved to Elena. Is that true? Elena looked from her sister to Adrian, then to the man who was supposed to oversee the transfer of her father's life's work. I don't know, she said honestly. I need time to think. You don't have time, Adrian's voice hardened. The story is out. Every reporter in Boston is digging into your business. Your board is in chaos. Your investors are panicking. You need stability, and you need it now. What I need, Elena said quietly, is to understand what I'm actually giving up. Margaret spoke up then. Moretti Shipping is worth approximately $200 million at current market value. Adrian's offer is $100 million, half price, as agreed. That's $100 million she's leaving on the table, Maria snapped. That's $100 million that buys her a life, Adrian countered. Without my intervention, Victor would have killed her. This is the price of survival. This is extortion. This is business. Elena rose to her feet abruptly. I need to see it, the company. I need to understand what I'm truly deciding. Adrian frowned. You've been to the headquarters. I've been to the boardroom. I've sat in meetings where I was talked over. I have never actually seen what the company does. The ships, the routes, the people who work there. I want to see all of it before I make a decision. That could take weeks. Then it takes weeks. Elena met his gaze. You said I don't know how to run this company. Maybe you're right, but I'm not signing it away until I at least know what I'm signing. A heavy silence filled the room. Margaret looked at Adrian. Maria looked at Elena with a flicker of pride. Adrian leaned back, studying Elena as if she were a puzzle that had just rearranged its own pieces. 1 week, he said finally. I will give you 1 week to tour the operation, talk to the staff, and understand the business. After that, we finalize the sale. 2 weeks. 1 week, Elena. That's the offer. Elena wanted to push, but she could see she had reached a line that would not move. Adrian's patience had been a tool, and all tools have their limits. 1 week, she agreed. Adrian stood. James will coordinate the tour. He knows the industry better than anyone. Use him. Learn fast. The meeting concluded with handshakes Elena didn't feel and promises she wasn't sure she could honor. Maria drove her back to the hotel, her hands clenched on the wheel in silence. You're actually considering it, Maria finally said. Selling. I'm considering not being a fool. Adrian's right. I don't know what I'm doing. So learn. That's the time you just bought for yourself. 1 week isn't enough to learn a shipping empire. No, but it's enough to find out if you want to. Elena gazed out the window as the city slid past. Somewhere in Boston, Victor was in a cell, likely still scheming his way out. Somewhere else, the Castellanos were mitigating the fallout. And everywhere, people were talking about her, the naive wife who had outplayed her husband, the heiress who had reclaimed her empire. Except she hadn't. Not really. She had just traded Victor's prison for Adrian's leash, unless she could find a way to break free from both. The tour began the next morning at 7. James Rutherford collected her in a car that looked older than Elena and probably cost more than her apartment. He did not engage in small talk, a fact for which she was grateful. Their first stop was the shipyard south of the city, where the Moretti shipping fleet was maintained. Elena had never been there. Victor had always insisted it was too dangerous, too industrial, not a suitable place for her. She now understood this was just another lie. Another wall he had built to keep her partitioned from the business that was her birthright. The shipyard was immense, a sprawl of cranes, containers, and ships in different stages of repair. The air was thick with the smell of salt, diesel, and rust. Men in hard hats moved with a shared purpose, shouting over the clamor of machines. James handed her a hard hat and a safety vest. Your father used to come here every week. He knew most of these men by name. Elena put on the vest, feeling like a pretender in her own life. I don't remember that. You were young, but they remember him and they remember you. They walked through the yard as James pointed out different vessels, explaining routes, cargo types, and maintenance schedules. Elena tried to absorb it all, but it was overwhelming, a language she had never been taught, a world she had been deliberately kept from. A foreman approached them, an older man with a weathered face and kind eyes. Ms. Moretti, it is good to see you here. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't... Dan Callahan, I worked with your father for 20 years. He glanced at James, then his eyes returned to Elena. We heard about your husband, about what he tried to do. I'm sorry for what you endured. Thank you. Your father would be proud of how you handled that. It took courage. A knot formed in Elena's throat. I'm not so sure. I am. Enzo Moretti forged this company from grit and sheer will. It seems you inherited both. Dan departed before Elena could answer. Surrounded by the steel and concrete of her father's legacy, she felt its immense weight settle upon her. He's not wrong, James murmured. Enzo was incredibly stubborn. He wouldn't sell even when the markets collapsed in 2008. Vowed Moretti shipping would weather any storm. Did it just barely. He put up everything he owned, buried himself in debt. He could have lost everything, yet he battled through and the company endured. And now I'm thinking of selling it to Adrian Keller. James fell silent for a beat. May I speak frankly with you? Please. Keller is a predator, clever, merciless, and patient. He's been circling this company for years, sensing weakness. Your union with Victor was his first chance. Your flight was his second. He will acquire this company and dismantle it, keeping the lucrative parts and discarding the rest. And if I don't sell, then you face the fight of your entire life. The board holds you in contempt. Half are Victor's appointments. The Castellanos will seek retribution for the deal you shattered. And you're correct. You don't know this business, not yet. So I'm trapped regardless, perhaps. Or perhaps you are precisely what this company requires. Elena's gaze sharpened on him. What is that supposed to mean? Your father founded Moretti Shipping on trust. He knew his people, his captains, his customers. Victor reduced it to numbers on a page. Peak efficiency with no soul. The company has been slowly bleeding out under his method. You have the power to change that. I wouldn't know how. Your father didn't know when he began either. He learned. And you can too. They passed the remainder of the day at the shipyard. James acquainted her with captains and crewmen, guiding her through manifests and sailing schedules. By day's end, Elena's mind swam with information she could hardly grasp. Yet something else stirred within her, an unforeseen flicker of intrigue. That evening, she returned to her hotel and immersed herself in everything about Moretti Shipping. Financial statements, market reports, rival tactics. She read until her eyes ached and her mind screamed for rest. Maria discovered her at 2 a.m, lost in a sea of documents and glowing screens. You should be sleeping. I have to grasp this. Elena, I have 4 days left, Maria. Just 4 days to decide if I can truly do this or if I should accept Adrian's money and disappear. Maria took the seat opposite her. What is your instinct saying? My instinct is screaming in fear. Good. It means you're aware. Maria drew a report toward her, her eyes scanning the page. What is this? Third quarter earnings. We bled 2 major accounts to rivals in the last 6 months. Victor was so consumed with plotting my end, he allowed the very business to crumble. Can you win them back? I have no idea. Maybe if I had a clue what I was doing, then we will decipher it together. Maria opened her own laptop. I may not understand shipping, but I understand business analysis. We'll dismantle this problem piece by piece. They toiled until morning, Maria decoding the dense financial terms into language Elena could process. As dawn broke, the truth of Moretti Shipping emerged. Not her father's empire, but the faltering entity Victor had abandoned. It can be saved, Maria said at last, but it requires true effort, not simply signing a document from Adrian. I realize that. And you'll need allies, people you can rely on. Who? The entire board is either loyal to Victor or terrified of the Castellanos. Maria paused thoughtfully. What if you brought in your own team? Purge the board, assemble a new one. With what credentials? I was a trophy wife for 2 years, but I wasn't. Maria's eyes met hers. I have managed the family foundation, handled investments, and contended with lawyers and board members who underestimated me because of my age and my gender. Does that sound familiar? Elena just stared at her sister. You want a position at Moretti Shipping? I want to help you defend what belongs to you, if you choose to fight for it. The foundation. It essentially manages itself now, and frankly, this is far more compelling. Something stirred deep inside Elena's chest. The crushing loneliness, the feeling she was facing this battle by herself, began to fracture. All right, she whispered. If I commit to this, if I hold on to the company, you'll join me. I'm with you. They sealed it with a handshake, and Elena felt the first genuine glimmer of hope she'd known since facing board. Perhaps this was possible after all. The remaining days became a whirlwind of meetings, site visits, and intensive lessons in maritime shipping. James escorted her through the main office, presenting her to division leaders and the essential staff who were the company's lifeblood. Some offered support, others were openly dubious. A handful were hostile, likely Victor's loyalists, eager for her to stumble. Elena documented it all. Who was an ally? Who was a liability? Which parts of business were thriving and which were failing? On the 4th day, she met the legal team. Margaret and Maria were present as Elena uncovered the full extent of the chaos Victor had created. The Castellano agreement is void, the senior counsel stated. but they are threatening a lawsuit for breach of contract. They allege they committed funds based on Victor's assurances. Can they succeed? Unlikely. But they can prolong the process, making it costly and brutal. That is likely their strategy. Train your resources with legal costs until you submit. What would a submission cost? 10 million, perhaps 15, along with favorable shipping rates on select routes. Alona felt ill. That's blackmail. That's commerce, the lawyer replied, his words a cold echo of Adrian's. What if we refuse? Then we engage in a fight that will take years and cost nearly as much. Either path costs you capital you likely do not have. Maria leaned in. What if we expose why the deal collapsed? Reveal the Castellanos' complicity in fraud and attempted homicide. The lawyer's expression shifted. That is an exceptionally dangerous move. The Castellanos possess powerful allies. Their retribution could exist far outside the courts. So we should just surrender, compensate them for their role in Victor's attempt on Elena's life. I am advising you to weigh every possibility. Elena heard their debate, the pressure of these impossible options pressing down on her. Each choice carried a heavy price. Every route was littered with mines. This was the reality of command, not just knowing routes and manifests, but steering through threats and power plays against those who would exploit or annihilate her. She recalled Adrian's proposal, $100 million. A simple escape. Let it become someone else's burden. But then her father's image came to mind, raising this company from dust. She thought of Dan Callahan and the workers who gave their lives to Moretti Shipping. She remembered the smug look on Victor's face as he schemed to steal it all. We resist, she declared. All eyes snapped to her. We resist the Castellanos. No settlement, no negotiation. I will make it understood that I am not Victor, and I will not be broken by fear. The attorney seemed distressed. Miss Moretti, Elena, and I comprehend the dangers, but they won't see a single cent from me. If a war is what they desire, then they shall have it. A faint smile touched Margaret's lips. Understood. We will make the necessary preparations. After the meeting, Elena felt Maria's touch on her arm. That was an act of either great courage or great foolishness, her sister commented. Likely a bit of both. Dad would have approved. Elena prayed she was right. On the last day of her week, she faced Adrian. He was in his office, as impeccably dressed and inscrutable as always. Elena took the chair opposite him, the sales contract for Moretti Shipping resting on the table, a silent threat between them. So, Adrian began, tell me what you have discovered. That you were correct. I am not equipped to lead a shipping company. But I can learn, and I am willing to try. Adrian's face remained a perfect, unreadable mask. That is an error. Perhaps. But the error will be mine to own. Elena, be sensible. You've had 1 week. Do you believe that compares to the 40 years your father dedicated to mastering this industry? No. But it is long enough to realize I will not surrender, even at the risk of losing everything. I have already faced total loss once before. I endured. I can endure this. Adrian leaned back in his chair, his calculating gaze fixed on her. You resemble him more than I realized. Your father. That same unyielding nature. I will accept that as praise. It is not. That trait nearly ruined this company several times. Enzo refused to evolve, to innovate. He operated on pure instinct and alliances, a method that brought him to the brink of ruin. And yet he didn't fail. He survived. Narrowly. You do not have the luxury of narrowly. You begin from a place of vulnerability. A tarnished name, a mutinous board, and the Castellano threat. You require power immediately. Then guide me. Adrian's eyebrows lifted slightly. I beg your pardon? You offered me 1 week to learn. In that time, I learned I cannot succeed alone, but also that I refuse to sell. So, rather than purchase the company, assist me in leading it. Your role? A consultant, an advisor, call it what you wish. You understand this business. You have wanted to possess Moretti Shipping for years. You must have a way to salvage this wreckage. And for your efforts, a 20% stake with the silence of a ghost partner. Should we rise, you'll be rich. Should we fall, the scraps will be yours to claim. Adrian remained silent, and in that quiet, Elena saw a mind at work calculating probabilities, assessing risks, hunting for the hidden flaw. That wasn't our arrangement, he finally uttered. I'm aware the landscape has shifted. So have I. This new offer serves us both better. Explain that. Because purchasing the company now lands you a crippled entity, rife with resentful staff and legal nightmares. But if you help me restore it, you acquire a fortified asset, far more valuable than your original price. And you get to twist the knife in Victor that much deeper, see him languish in a cell, knowing his wife not only endured, but conquered. The faintest trace of a smile touched Adrian's lips. You're adapting. Is that an agreement? It is a possibility. I require time to consider. You have until the morning. After that, I forge ahead with you or without. Elena rose, leaving the unsigned agreement on the table, and departed before Adrian could witness the tremor in her hands. She had just wagered her entire future on becoming a woman she wasn't yet sure could exist. But she was finished being the delicate wife, the ornamental heiress, the woman perpetually underestimated. It was time to learn who Elena Moretti truly was. Adrian's call came the next morning before her first coffee was done. 25%, he began, dispensing with pleasantries, and I demand a seat on the board. A surge hammered against Elena's ribs, but her voice remained a placid surface. 20%, and you may attend meetings as an observer, holding no vote. 23, with advisory privileges on significant financial matters. 22, advisory alone, with a commitment to weekly consulting hours in a contract. A beat of silence, then Adrian's laugh, low and real. You have been rehearsing. Maria has been my tutor. Do we have an accord? We have an accord. I will have Margaret deliver the documents. Elena cut the connection, allowing herself precisely 10 seconds of feeling. The exhilaration of the win, the dread of her commitment. Then she finished her coffee and began her work. That first month was a crucible. Elena claimed her father's old office at the Moretti Shipping headquarters, a corner room with a view of the harbor. Victor's presence lingered, his accolades on the wall, his fine pens in a drawer, a wedding photograph that churned her stomach. She purged it all. Every remnant of him was packed away, removed by security as if they were clearing a crime scene. Then she brought in her own history. Her mother's seascape, her father's compass, a whiteboard where she charted her new knowledge, linking one piece to the next until the office resembled a strategist's command center. Maria occupied the adjacent office and began dismantling the company's fiscal architecture. In less than a week, she had unearthed 3 separate accounts Victor used to bleed money, funneling it through shell corporations that traced back to the Castellanos. He siphoned nearly $2 million in the last year, Maria stated, placing a file on Elena's desk. Is it documented, traceable, prosecutable? Forward it to Margaret. add it to his list of crimes. It's done. But Elena, this will only provoke the Castellanos further. They will interpret this as a direct assault. Good. Let them be provoked. It might make them careless. Maria's expression was laced with worry, but she offered no argument. She understood that once Elena's mind was set, resistance only strengthened her resolve. James Rutherford visited twice a week, schooling Elena in the company's operational heart. He taught her to decipher a cargo manifest, to bargain with port authorities, to discern a profitable route from a financial sinkhole. "You're absorbing this more quickly than I anticipated," he remarked one afternoon, looking over her analysis of their European routes. "Is that praise?" "It is an observation. This knowledge takes most people months to grasp. You've mastered the fundamentals in mere weeks. The fundamentals are not enough. True, but they are a foundation." James produced another file. "We must address your board dilemma." Elena had been dreading this. Of 12 board members, at least half were openly opposed to her leadership. They would attend meetings, vote down every initiative she put forth, and then whisper to journalists about how Elena Moretti was steering her father's legacy into ruin. "I cannot dismiss them," she said. "Not without justification. You don't need to dismiss them. You need to outplay them." How? James illuminated the bylaws she had never read, the voting mechanics Victor had wielded to keep his grip. There were clauses for board expansion, for convening emergency meetings, for ousting members who betrayed their fiduciary responsibilities. 3 of them are on precarious ground already, James noted. They've taken gifts from our rivals, likely violating conflict of interest rules. You prove it, present it to the board, and make them choose between resignation or an investigation. And the rest? You present them with a decision. Cooperate with you or be left behind as the company prospers. When you prove your competence, the majority will come around. Those who refuse will see themselves out. Elena examined the list of names, men who had known her father, who had seen her grow from a girl, yet still saw a child playing pretend in the seat of power. "I want them gone," she declared. "Every last one. Anyone who stood idle while Victor bled this company dry. That is half your board. Then I will rebuild it. I want people who believe in Moretti shipping, not in their own status. Do you have candidates?" Elena produced her own list, names she had been gathering for weeks. Dan Callahan from the docks, 2 ship captains James had vouched for, a supply chain authority Maria discovered, an environmental specialist focused on green shipping. None possess conventional board experience, James observed. Neither do I. But they understand this business, and they value the people within it. That is the company my father founded. That is what I intend to restore. James watched her for a long, quiet moment. "You know, when you first requested my help with the tour, I gave you maybe 3 weeks before you'd accept Adrian's deal. I misjudged. You were not the only one with that opinion, yourself included." A faint smile touched Elena's lips. "Especially myself. The board's restructuring required another month of precise strategy." Elena gathered proof of the conflicts, built her argument, and laid it before the full board during a meeting that stretched 4 hours, concluding with 3 coerced resignations and 2 who exited in a fury. Those who were left seemed stunned. "This is highly unorthodox," one of them, an older man named Preston and a friend of her father's, remarked. "Reorganizing the board without adequate warning." "I gave you a warning," Elena said, her tone even. I informed all of you a month ago that a new era was beginning. You elected not to believe me. That was your error. She presented her new board members, observing the old guard's expressions as they understood she had filled the room with people of genuine expertise, people who would not reflexively oppose her for being young, a woman, and someone they thought they could easily manipulate. This remains deeply irregular, Preston repeated, though his voice had lost its edge. So was my husband, attempting to have me killed for my inheritance. We are all simply adjusting to irregular times. The session closed with Elena's motions passing, a first since she took command. It tasted of victory, modest but tangible, yet victories always carry a cost. 2 days later, Antonio Castellano appeared at her office, uninvited. Elena's assistant attempted to block his path, but Antonio moved past her as if she were mist, taking a seat opposite Elena's desk with the confidence of a man who had never been denied anything. Miss Moretti, a discussion is in order. Elena did not rise, nor did she extend a hand. I have no words for you. A pity, because I have a great many for you. Antonio settled back, perfectly composed. You have leveled some extremely damaging claims against my associates. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. These are serious accusations. They are also entirely true. Victor conspired with you to seize my company. I possess the evidence. What you possess is a recording of Victor Moretti making boasts fueled by alcohol and delusion. You have no proof that links his plans to me. The financial transfers indicate otherwise. Antonio's gaze sharpened. Financial transfers can be misread. Business arrangements can be misunderstood. You are new to this world, Ms. Moretti. You fail to grasp its complexities. I grasp that you assisted my husband in planning my murder for a share of my estate. That seems quite simple. Had I genuinely wished for your death, you would be dead. Antonio said it without emotion, as if discussing the day's forecast. Victor was reckless, sentimental, and arrogant. I cautioned him against the entire scheme, but he was certain he could manage it alone. A chill traced a path down Elena's spine. Are you confessing to I am confessing nothing? I am clarifying your reality. Victor was defeated because he misjudged you. I will not repeat that error. Is that a threat? It is a business proposition. Antonio leaned in. You are drowning. Your board is fractured, your name is tarnished, and you are creating adversaries faster than you can manage them. Allow me to assist you. Assist me? You just implied if you wanted me dead, but I do not want you dead. I want the Atlantic shipping lanes, and you can deliver them. Not without compensation, of course. I am ready to pay the proper market rate, secure a long-term agreement, and offer the sort of political insulation you will need when this affair with Victor goes public. Elena fought for a stillness she didn't feel, dissecting the true nature of his proposal. Why entertain an alliance with a man who aided my husband's attempt on my life? Because I am the devil you recognize. You, because my influence can make your legal troubles vanish or they can compound, all depending on my whim. Because in 6 months, when the board sees you are still lost at sea, you will desperately need a friend. I can be that friend, or I can become your waking nightmare. The choice is yours. He rose, smoothed his cuffs, and offered a smile as if they'd merely discussed the rain. Consider it. You have my number. And then he vanished, leaving Elena alone in her office, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, her thoughts a maelstrom. She dialed Adrian instantly. Castellano presented me with an offer. She breathed the moment he answered. What sort of offer? She recounted their exchange verbatim. A long, heavy silence stretched from Adrian's end. "He is probing for weakness," he said at last. "Victor was convinced you were fragile. Castellano is testing that theory. What is my move? Decline. Do it publicly if you can. Make it known you will not play his game." And his response: "We will face it when it comes. But Elena, you cannot afford to show weakness now. Not to him, not to anyone. The second you falter, you are finished." Elena cut the connection and stared toward the harbor, where vessels sailed in and out, laden with cargo, commerce, and the crushing legacy of her father. A deep weariness settled in her bones. She was tired of the fight, of constantly having to prove her worth, of the paranoia that any choice could be the one that brought it all crashing down. But to stop was to surrender, and she had already lost too much. She composed her reply to Castellano. It was brief, professional, and utterly definitive. Moretti Shipping would not be engaging in business with the Castellano Group, neither now nor at any point in the future. She sent it, bracing for the storm. It broke faster than she'd imagined. Within the week, 2 of Moretti Shipping's keystone clients voided their contracts. No reasons were given, just standard clauses invoked, ending business ties that had stood for years. Maria unearthed the link. Both companies are leveraged with loans from Castellano Financial Services. And can you guess who just called in their debts? He's cutting off our air supply, setting a precedent. He's showing the world what befalls those who deny Antonio Castellano. A sharp, hot fury surged in Elena's chest. Can we absorb the loss of those clients? In the short term, yes. But long term, we must replace that income stream immediately, or we will start failing to make payroll, then we replace it. James, I need you to call on every connection in your book. I want new clients, new shipping lanes, anything to plug these holes. James appeared skeptical. That will be a challenge. The word is already spreading that Moretti Shipping is taking on water. No one wants to board a vessel they believe is sinking. Then we prove to them we are not sinking. Where are we strongest? Our European roots, they always have been. Your father forged those connections personally. They've remained strong even through Victor's disastrous tenure. Then that's where we make our stand. Propose incentives, better pricing, faster turnarounds. Do whatever is necessary to demonstrate that we are here to stay. The desperate effort to recoup the lost business became a 3-week marathon. Elena endured 16-hour days, sitting through meetings with potential partners who regarded her as a child in her father's chair, haggling over contracts with firms that lowballed her, sensing her desperation. She was desperate, but she learned to conceal it. Adrian's assistance was more significant than Elena cared to acknowledge. He arranged introductions, vouched for her capability, and would sometimes appear at a meeting simply to lend his gravitas to her cause. His standing in the industry was unimpeachable, and his presence made others take her seriously, but it also fueled gossip. Are you involved with him? Maria asked one evening, both of them too drained to maintain their usual filters. Elena glanced up from the contract she was studying. What? Adrian Keller, the whispers are everywhere about the time you two spend together, about how he's constantly in your corner, about the way he watches you. And how does he watch me? Like you are a puzzle he can't decide whether to solve or to break. Elena let out a bitter laugh. That sounds about right. But you are not sleeping with him. No. Why would that even be a question? Because Victor used to look at you that exact same way, and we all know how that concluded. The remark landed with more force than Maria likely intended. Elena pushed the contract aside, rubbing her temples. "Adrian isn't Victor," she said softly. "Are you certain, or is he just more adept at hiding his true nature?" Elena had no reply. The contracts were eventually signed, enough to steady the company, to demonstrate they could survive Castellano's assault. Elena presented the new partnerships at the following board meeting and saw the skepticism on their faces finally melt into something resembling respect. "A good effort," James admitted to her later. "You might just navigate your way through this." "Might? You are not clear of the storm yet, but you remain afloat." "That is more than most of us anticipated." Elena accepted it. That evening, she returned to the house for the first time since the confrontation. She had been avoiding the place, staying with Maria, or working so late she merely slept in her office. But she needed things: files, personal effects, perhaps some kind of closure. The house felt haunted. Every room was a ghost of the woman she had once been, the wife who gave her trust so freely and paid the price. She moved with purpose, collecting files from the study, clothes from the bedroom, her mother's jewelry case from the safe. As she was preparing to go, she saw Victor's desk drawer, the one that was always locked. It had been forced open, likely by the police during their search. Inside lay another folder, one she hadn't found before. The tab read, "E.M. Personal." Elena's hand trembled as she lifted the flap. It contained photographs of her and Victor from their wedding, but not the formal portraits. These were candid, stolen moments, and in each one, Victor was looking at the camera, while Elena gazed at him with an unconditional adoration that now made her sick. Beneath the pictures were papers, her medical files from Dr. Hammond, with detailed notes on hormone therapies, sedative schedules, methods of psychological manipulation, and a timeline for how they intended to dismantle her, piece by agonizing piece. At the bottom, a single handwritten line in Victor's script: "Insurance, in case she ever becomes clever enough to be a liability." Elena stared at the phrase as a chilling understanding washed over her. Victor had chronicled everything. It wasn't a confession, it was ammunition to be used against her if she ever resisted. He was going to argue she was unstable, that the treatments were for valid health reasons, that her accusations were the ramblings of a disturbed woman. He had constructed a cage inside of a cage, and she had nearly stepped into it. But Adrian had acted first. The recording, the proof, the public disgrace. It all unfolded before Victor could use his insurance, which meant Adrian had known. He had understood Victor's strategy better than the man who created it. Elena gathered the folder, placed it in the box of her belongings, and walked out of that house forever. She drove directly to Adrian's building. It was well past midnight, but she was certain he would be there. He was a man who lived in his office. His assistant was gone, allowing Elena to stride unannounced into his private sanctuary. Adrian was at his desk, surrounded by documents, his head snapping up in surprise at her arrival. "Elena, what is it?" She let the folder fall onto his desk. "You knew about Victor's contingency plan, the fabricated medical history, the insurance policy. You knew he would try to paint me as mentally ill if I ever turned on him." Adrian glanced at the folder but made no move to touch it. "Yes. For how long have you known? Since before we ever met." "I have been monitoring Victor for 3 years. I was aware of every move he was planning." Elena felt the floor drop out from under her. 3 years? You've been observing this entire time? I have been waiting for the opportune moment, for the perfect leverage. You provided me with both. I provided you. Elena's voice broke. I came to you, believing you were my last hope. But you had already planned to use me, hadn't you? This entire arrangement, your help, our partnership, it was just another maneuver to ruin Victor and get what you desired. Adrian rose from his chair slowly. That is not the entire truth. Which part is a lie? The part where you manipulated me from the very start, or the part where you let me believe I had any real choice? You always had a choice. You could have fled, taken the settlement, and vanished. You chose to fight because you presented it as the only path. Because it was the only path that allowed you to survive with your self-respect. Adrian's tone grew harder. Yes, I was aware of Victor's schemes. Yes, I put myself in a position to gain from your predicament. But I also ensured your survival. I armed you with the means to annihilate the man who planned to murder you. I helped you reclaim what was yours. That has to be worth something. It is worth you getting precisely what you wanted while I believed I was in control of my own destiny. You were in control. I simply made certain you possessed the necessary information to make the correct choices. Elena wanted to scream, to shatter something, to feel anything at all besides the immense, suffocating weight of this new betrayal. Did you ever intend to tell me the truth? Perhaps when you were ready to bear it, stop. Elena's words were like broken glass. Do not frame this as a kindness to me. You saw a chance, and you seized it. I was merely the instrument you wielded. You are far more than that, am I? Or just another piece on your board? Adrian fell silent for a long count. When he finally spoke, his tone was softer than she had ever known. At the start, yes, you were the path to an objective, but you were unexpected, Elena. How you bent but never broke, how you fought, how you mastered the game. I never anticipated that. Most would have been crushed by it. And what does that change? It changes the entire board, because you are no longer just a weapon. You're a player now, and that is what makes you a threat. Elena watched him, searching for the tell, for the thread of another manipulation versus a sliver of honesty. I cannot trust you, she said at last. Good. You never should. Trust is a luxury for those who don't know any better. Then why would I continue this alliance? Because you have need of me and I of you. Because our combined strength eclipses what we could do alone. Because whether we accept it or not, our fates are now entwined. Do you believe the Castellanos distinguish between your firm and my investment? We are now a single target. He was right. Elena hated that he was right. I demand complete transparency, she declared. No more secrets. No more maneuvering. If you possess knowledge that impacts my company or me, you bring it to me without delay. It is done. And the partnership articles will be rewritten. Equal say on all critical decisions. You will no longer have the power to make unilateral choices that affect Moretti shipping. A faint smile touched Adrian's lips. Now you are beginning to bargain. I will have Margaret draft the revisions. Elena clutched the folder to her chest as if it were a shield. I am not your tool, Adrian, and I am not your pawn. If this continues, it continues as equals. Equals. Adrian offered his hand. I can accept those terms. Elena studied his outstretched hand for a long moment before taking it. She did not trust him. Perhaps she never would. But she was realizing that trust was not a prerequisite for survival. Power was. And for the first time since the nightmare began, Elena Moretti finally held some. The amended partnership documents arrived 3 days later. Elena scrutinized every sentence twice before she signed. Maria was her witness, then drew her away. You understand, this doesn't truly make you equals, don't you? Adrian has played this game his entire life. You've had 6 months. I know, but I learned quickly. That is what I fear. Elena didn't press for an explanation. She already knew. The person she was becoming, calculating, shielded, forever seeking the advantage, was not the woman from a year ago. She might not even recognize her, but that other woman had nearly been murdered. This new version of her was still drawing breath. She would take it. The following month settled into a cadence that felt deceptively normal. Elena managed the company with Maria's guidance and Adrian's periodic input. The board meetings grew less tense as her new appointments found their confidence. Profit stabilized, then began to rise. Slowly, arduously, Moretti shipping started to resemble something her father could have been proud of. Victor's trial was scheduled for the early spring. Margaret kept Elena appraised of the prosecution's case. It was ironclad, overwhelming, and almost guaranteed a conviction. Victor's defense was already proposing plea agreements, trying to reduce the charge from attempted murder to conspiracy and fraud. They're suggesting 15 years, Margaret said during a weekly call. With good behavior, he might be out in 10. A sickness churned in Elena's stomach. 10 years. Victor would be 45 upon his release, young enough to rebuild, to start again, to likely shatter another life. What if we reject the deal, force a trial? Then you will have to testify. Relive the entire nightmare before a gallery of cameras while his defense team dissects every fragment. They will use the pills, paint you as unstable, and try to make the jury question everything you say. But we have his confession on tape, which they will claim was an illegal recording made without his knowledge in a private home. A skilled lawyer might get it dismissed, and without it, our position weakens considerably. Elena shut her eyes, feeling the old, familiar rage ignite. So he could walk free, he will not walk free. But he could receive a sentence far less than he is owed. That is the nature of the system. I am sorry. The call disconnected, leaving Elena in her office, staring into the void. After all of it, the terror, the scheming, the public demolition of Victor's name, he could still emerge with a small victory. It was not just, but she was learning justice was a myth. Only power was real. She dialed Adrian. I need to ensure Victor remains imprisoned for as long as the law allows. What will it take? Your testimony. You take the stand. You tell the jury precisely what he did, and you make it impossible for them to see him as anything but a monster. Margaret says his defense will shred me. They will make the attempt. But you are more formidable than they realize, and certainly more than Victor ever did. Adrian paused. The only question is, are you prepared for that kind of war? Elena thought of the woman who had stood trembling outside Victor's study, hearing her own death being planned. That woman was terrified, broken, holding herself together with threads. The woman she was now would set the courthouse ablaze if it meant seeing Victor pay for his crimes. Arrange a meeting with the prosecutors. I will testify. Elena? I will testify, she said again, and I will make every soul in that room know exactly what he is. The preparation was more harrowing than she'd imagined. Endless hours with prosecutors, dissecting every detail, every second, every shred of proof. They had her listen to the recording over and over until Victor's words were branded into her mind. Elena Moretti, pregnant, unstable, loses control of her car in a storm. Tragic, utterly heartbreaking. With every listen, something inside her turned to steel. Maria attended each session, taking notes, posing questions the lawyers had missed. She was assembling her own file, her own understanding of the conspiracy. "Do you know what I can't stop thinking about?" Maria asked one night after a grueling session. "How long he must have been orchestrating it all? The pills, the false pregnancy, the accident. That would require months of planning, possibly more. What are you getting at? My point is that he was designing your death long before you knew you were in danger, before you had a single reason to doubt him. That isn't just monstrous, Elena. That is a level of patience that is truly terrifying." Elena understood where she was headed. "You believe Adrian is the same? I believe Adrian watched for 3 years as Victor dismantled you and did nothing until he saw a personal advantage. That is also patience. That is also terrifying. He saved my life. He saved his investment. You were simply the means." Maria took Elena's hand. "I'm not telling you to abandon him. I'm telling you to never forget what he is. I have not forgotten." But sometimes late at night, as she and Adrian mapped out company strategies or he explained the labyrinth of maritime law, Elena wondered if she was starting to. If their partnership was morphing into something else, something she lacked the words for. Adrian was always the professional, never crossing a line. Yet there were instances, a hand on her arm in a tense negotiation. The way his gaze lingered when she made a brilliant business move. The sharp, protective tone in his voice if anyone dared question her authority. It felt like something significant. Elena just didn't know what. She had no time to decipher it. The trial loomed, and she had to be ready. The courthouse was a storm of activity when Elena appeared. A crush of reporters with camera flashes tracking her like a target. She was dressed in a severe, expensive black suit Maria had selected. A world away from the gentle pastels Victor once preferred for her. Margaret met her at the steps. "Are you ready?" "No, but I'm proceeding regardless." The courtroom was a cliché of legal dramas. The dark wood, the soaring ceilings, the immense weight of institutional power bearing down. Victor was at the defense table, his orange jumpsuit meant to diminish him. Yet somehow it failed. His eyes found hers the moment she entered, and for a heartbeat, Elena saw the man who had comforted her as she wept over the child that never was. The man who had kissed her brow and sworn everything would be fine. Then she heard his voice from the recording in her mind, and the illusion was annihilated. The prosecution put her on the stand early. Elena swore the oath, her hand resting on the Bible. The assistant district attorney was a woman in her 40s named Chen, no relation to Margaret, who had built a career prosecuting domestic abusers. She led Elena through the events, her tone gentle but relentless. The marriage, the medication, the revelation in his study. "Could you tell the jury what you overheard that night?" Elena drew a steadying breath. "I overheard my husband planning to murder me. He was going over the timing, the method, how he would stage it to look like a tragic accident. He spoke about the phantom pregnancy he had orchestrated, about the drugs he had been feeding me. He spoke of it as if..." Her voice fractured. "As if I were a complication to be dealt with, not a person, just an obstacle in his path." How did it leave her feeling? She was terrified, betrayed, and foolish for her own blindness. The objection to her emotional state was overruled. Chen methodically laid bare the facts, exposing Victor as a monster of cold calculation. Then, The cross-examination began. Victor's counsel was precisely what Elena had braced for. A man in a fine suit with manufactured compassion, the type who absolved himself by calling it a job. Mrs. Moretti, you took multiple prescriptions during the marriage, did you not? I did. Prescriptions my husband's pawn provided, lacking any license or medical authority. But you took them of your own free will. I took them believing my husband's claim they would ease my anxiety. I never imagined they were tools to make me more pliable. Were you ever diagnosed with anxiety before you were married? No. So this anxiety only surfaced after your wedding to Mr. Moretti. Elena felt the jaws of the trap. The anxiety began when he started poisoning me. Or perhaps the immense pressure of running a corporation while grieving your parents led to legitimate health issues needing medication. No. I was coping until Victor began his slow poisoning. The lawyer's mask slipped, just for a moment. That is quite a dramatic interpretation, Mrs. Moretti. Do you possess medical proof that these prescriptions were damaging? Margaret rose to her feet. The prosecution has already entered Dr. Hammond's sworn statement, which confirms the sedatives were meant to manipulate Mrs. Moretti's psychological stability. Dr. Hammond, who faces his own indictment and might be bartering testimony for mercy, the defense lawyer shot back. This war of words raged for another hour. They tried to frame Elena as unstable, a creature of delusion. They twisted the secret recordings she made into evidence of paranoia that predated any crime she uncovered. But Elena stood firm, against every charge, every distorted word. She held the line. The fragile wife was gone. In her place stood the survivor, the warrior, the victor. When she finally stepped down, she was trembling from a mix of raw fury and utter depletion. Yet her mission was complete. 3 weeks later, the jury found Victor guilty on all counts: conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. The judge sentenced him to 25 years, with no parole for 15. Elena was not in the courtroom for the verdict. She was in a meeting about Pacific expansion routes when she got the call. 25 years, Margaret said. He will be nearly 60 when he's even considered for release. Elena offered her thanks, ended the call, and returned to her meeting. The triumph felt hollow, a story about a stranger. That night, she drove to the harbor, the place her father once took her before the empire and its burdens grew so vast. She sat on the pier, watching the ships glide like ghosts through the ink-black water, trying to name the emotion she was supposed to feel. Was it relief? Justice? All she felt was a profound weariness and a deep solitude. I had a feeling I'd find you here. Elena turned. Adrian was there, hands pocketed, his usual sharp edges softened, as if he'd actually escaped the office before midnight. How did you know? A fortunate guess. This is your place for thinking. She did not question how he knew. Adrian saw everything. It was the source of his danger. He sat beside her, their shoulders a breath apart, and for a long moment they simply watched the tide in silence. You won, Adrian said at last. Victor is caged, the company is secure, the Castellanos are in retreat. You achieved all your objectives. Then why does it feel so empty? Because you're learning that victory doesn't mend what was shattered. It only gives you the space to decide what follows. Elena studied him, the architect of her salvation who had served his own complex design. What follows for you? The usual: expanding the empire, forging new alliances, remaining 10 moves ahead of the world. And where do I fall in those plans? Adrian's gaze met hers, and a subtle change occurred in his eyes. A flicker of something that could have been real. That's the issue, Elena. You don't fall into them. You were never meant to be a peer. You weren't supposed to defy me, to force me to rethink my own grand designs. Yet you do. Is that a grievance? It is a fact. He paused. I've considered our agreement, the equal control, the mandatory transparency. Anyone else would have seized the buyout, but you fought for true authority. It was brilliant. You were a good teacher. I gave you the fundamentals. The mastery was all your own. A warmth bloomed in Elena's chest, both intoxicating and perilous. Why are you telling me this now? Because you need to understand what you are now. You are no longer the frightened woman from that warehouse. You have become a threat to your rivals, to the Castellano, and likely to me if I let my guard down. Should I be concerned about that? That you'll find me too great a threat? A true smile touched Adrian's eyes. You should always be concerned. It's the paranoia that has kept you breathing. He rose, offering her a hand. Elena accepted it, the heat of his skin a stark contrast to the night air, and she wondered when their arrangement had begun to feel like something more than strategy. There is something I need to show you, Adrian said, at my office, if you're willing. Elena knew she should refuse, should maintain the safe distance she had fought to create. She went with him instead. Adrian's skyscraper was a hollow shell at this hour, home only to security guards and ghosts. They rode the elevator to his floor, striding past the very rooms where they had engineered Victor's downfall and into his private sanctuary. He produced a folder and gave it to her. Inside lay deeds and transfer forms, a dense collection of legalese she couldn't immediately process. What am I looking at? The house. Your former house. I doubt you have any desire for it. I had it valued, appraised, and readied for the market. But before I list it, you have an option. An option to do what? To burn it to the ground. Elena's head snapped up. Adrian's face was utterly grave. I acquired the adjacent lot 6 months ago. If we raise both structures, the combined land is far more valuable. We could build something entirely new, or we can simply erase it and leave the earth bare. The decision is yours. You're serious. Perfectly. That house stands as a shrine to all that Victor did to you. I thought you might want it gone. Elena's eyes fell back to the documents, to the address of the home she once believed was her future, the prison where she was poisoned, controlled, and nearly murdered. The thought of watching it turn to ash was a dizzying poison of its own. When, she breathed, the moment you are ready. The demolition was set for a month later, once Elena had a crew salvage any remaining pieces of her past. There was almost nothing she wished to save. Victor's influence had tainted every chair, every room. She saved her mother's gardening shears from the shed and a single wedding photograph of her parents, found in an attic box Victor had never opened. The rest was sold, donated, or hauled away. On the day of the demolition, Elena stood with Adrian and Maria across the street, watching the preparations. The house seemed diminished, its power gone. It was just a structure, no longer the cage she remembered. This is your last opportunity to reconsider, Adrian murmured. My mind is made. The foreman gave the sign. The first wall buckled with a roar that resonated deep in Elena's soul. Then another and another until the whole frame folded inward, consumed by a storm of dust and splintered wood. As she watched it vanish, something inside her finally came to rest. It wasn't healing, but it was an ending. The last vestige of Victor's power was now just rubble. "How do you feel?" Maria asked. "Like I can breathe again." They departed before the cleanup was complete. Elena had a board meeting, agreements to sign, a life that demanded her attention. It moved forward even as the wreckage cooled. 6 months after the demolition, Elena addressed the entire company at the annual shareholders meeting. The hall was overflowing with board members, financiers, and workers from the docks who had come to hear her. A year prior, this would have paralyzed her with fear. Now she was serene. She spoke of their recovery, of new shipping lanes and plans for a sustainable future. She spoke of her father's dream, how they were honoring his legacy while forging their own. She never once uttered Victor's name. He was a ghost, imprisoned where he could do no more harm. The applause that followed was real. She could see it in their expressions. A deep respect, perhaps even awe. They no longer saw an heiress in a borrowed role. They saw their leader. Adrian stood at the rear of the room, his expression a familiar mix she now understood. Pride, satisfaction, and a hint of ownership. They walked to his car after the meeting. Elena had sold her own vehicle, unable to bear driving after all that had transpired. Adrian served as her driver when their paths merged. "A fine speech," he commented, pulling into the flow of traffic. "Thank you. Maria penned most of it. But you were the one who gave it life. That is all that counts." They drove on in a rare, easy silence. Then Adrian spoke again, his voice softer. "I have something I must tell you." Elena's defenses rose instantly. "What is it?" "Do you recall asking if I had planned all this from the start, using you to ruin Victor?" "I recall you confirming that you did. There's more I haven't told you." Adrian's gaze remained fixed on the road. "My surveillance wasn't limited to Victor. I watched your entire family, your father especially." A chill crept over Elena. "Why?" 20 years ago, your father secured a contract meant for my father's firm. A multi-million-dollar deal whose loss ruined us. My father died trying to recover what he'd lost. I needed retribution. Against my father. Against Moretti Shipping. Against the name that erased my own. Adrian's jaw hardened. I spent years maneuvering to dismantle your company. The strategy was to wait for your father's weakest moment, then break him. But he passed before I could act. The incident involving your parents. Elena's pulse stopped. What about the incident? Adrian's eyes finally met hers, vacant and hollow. It was no incident, Elena. I had their vehicle compromised. I am the reason they are gone. The world spun off its axis. Elena couldn't draw a breath, her mind blank, unable to comprehend his words. Her parents, the crash that had fractured her world, that left her utterly alone, easy quarry for Victor. Adrian had orchestrated it all. "Stop the car!" Her voice was alien to her ears. "Elena, stop the car right now!" Adrian veered to the roadside. Elena flung the door open, stumbling onto the pavement. She managed 3 paces before her knees buckled, the sheer gravity of it all forcing her down. Her parents, the sound of her father's laugh, the sight of her mother's hands in the soil, how they saw only each other in a crowded room, extinguished, not by cruel fate or random chance, but because Adrian Keller demanded his vengeance. She sensed Adrian's presence behind her. "I'm sorry, I realize that doesn't—" "Don't!" Elena's voice was a raw wound. "Do not dare offer me an apology. You have to see, you killed them." Elena whirled to face him, the control she'd cultivated for a year shattering into a million pieces. You murdered my parents for their company, and then you preyed on me. You deceived me. You made me believe you were my ally when all this time I was your ally. Every action I took to shield you from Victor was genuine. Only because you wanted the privilege of destroying me yourself, not him. Adrian flinched, yet he offered no denial. Initially, yes, that was my intent. But things changed, Elena. You changed them. I don't trust a single thing you say. Not one word from your mouth is real to me. Then trust this. Adrian produced an envelope from his jacket, offering it to her. I drafted this 3 months ago. I've been searching for the right moment, but no such moment exists. There is only the truth. Elena's trembling hands tore it open. Inside lay a legal document transferring Adrian's entire interest in Moretti shipping directly to her. 22% the company returned, without condition or caveat. I have no desire for your company, Adrian said softly. I no longer seek revenge on your father. I only want— He paused, as if wrestling with the words. I want you to be truly free, unbound to me, unburdened by obligation, not locked inside another cage. Elena stared at the document, at the already notarized signature. Why tell me this now? Why not just— Because you have a right to know the whole truth. Every part of it. I have been dishonest with you since we first met, and I am done with lies. You deserve to know precisely who I am and what I have done. Then you can decide our future. Our future is one where I never lay eyes on you again. I understand. Adrian's tone was even, but his eyes held the look of something shattered. The transfer is immediate. My resignation from the board will follow tomorrow. You will never be burdened by my presence again. He turned to leave. Elena remained on the curb, clutching the papers that granted her everything she had fought for. Absolute authority over her company, liberation from Adrian's web, power that was hers alone. And the price was the knowledge that her savior was also her destroyer. She thought of her father, of the defiant spirit James had described. Enzo Moretti had never surrendered, battling impossible odds for his company. But he had also forged enemies, likely crushing others' ambitions while realizing his own. There are no clean wins, no flawless heroes, only people making unbearable choices and bearing the fallout. Elena rose, her legs more stable now. She looked at Adrian, the man who had authored her parents' demise and her own survival. I can't forgive you, she said. Not for my parents. Perhaps not ever. I know. But I am not surrendering this company, and I will not let their deaths be for nothing. Elena drew a deep breath. I will build something they would have been proud of, an enterprise that helps people instead of ruining them, and you will help me. Adrian's head snapped up. What? You have a debt to me that can never be paid. So you will spend your life attempting to. You will leverage your contacts, your wealth, your ruthless gift for strategy, all of it, to help me make Moretti shipping a force for good. Something that matters. Elena, you don't want me. I don't want you anywhere near my life. But I require your skills. And you need to atone for this, even if full atonement is impossible. She held his gaze. That is the agreement. Accept it, or I ensure the world knows what you did. Your name, your firm, every brick you've laid. I will reduce it all to dust. Adrian watched her for a long moment, then gave a slow, deliberate nod. Oh, all right, I accept. And Adrian, if you deceive me again, if you try to control me, if you harm anyone I value, I will not just ruin you, I will end you. Is that clear? It is. Elena returned to the car, got in, and waited for him to follow. They drove in a weighted silence. Everything had shifted once more, and she couldn't tell if this was wisdom or madness, but it was her decision, made with open eyes, with all the power, with a full grasp of the bargain. That had to mean something. The foundation was launched a year later. Elena stood at a podium before journalists and executives, outlining the Moretti Family Foundation's new mission. Adrian was seated in the front row watching. He had contributed half of his fortune to its creation. No questions asked. A penance for sins beyond forgiveness, sins that could only be acknowledged. They were colleagues, not friends, and it was clear they never would be. Elena maintained a careful distance, using his talents while never forgetting his crimes. Some days she loathed him, some days she saw his pain, most days she felt both. Maria was beside her on the stage, the new CFO of Moretti Shipping, and the one soul Elena trusted completely. The Moretti sisters had built something new together, something their parents would have known. After the event, Elena sought a quiet corner, drawing out her phone. A notification from prison waited. Victor had attempted to send her a letter. The warden inquired if she wished to accept it. Elena deleted the message without a reply. She had no use for Victor's words, his excuses, his pathetic attempts to remain a fixture in her story. He was the past, caged where he belonged. She was the future, not whole, not healed, rarely even okay, but liberated, finally and truly liberated. Elena Moretti stepped from the event hall into the Boston night. Her company was safe, her purpose was sharp, and her life was her own for the first time in ages. She had learned to spot the predators before they pounced, learned to command power without losing her soul, and learned that survival sometimes required pacts with demons and living with the terms. The terrified, broken woman who once stood outside Victor's study would not recognize the person she had become. And that was, after all, the entire point.
Elena Moretti really thought she was living inside a love story with some stress on the side. Big mistake. Because while she was out here trusting the forehead kisses, the gentle reminders to take her pills, and the soft little rest sweetheart routine, her dear husband Victor was basically running a deluxe premium murder subscription plan behind her back. This man was not husband material. This man was a boardroom snake in a tailored suit. And the wildest part? He didn't even need to raise his voice. He did it all with a smile, a steady hand, and enough fake concern to fool everyone around him, especially Elena. That's what made the whole thing so nasty. He wasn't trying to beat her into obedience. He was trying to drug her into doubt, romance her into compliance, and bury her before she even realized she'd been chosen as the victim. Then came that rainy night, and oh, this is where the entire story detonates. Elena comes home by accident, slips through the house, and hears voices from Victor's study. At first, she probably thinks it's another business meeting, but nope. What she actually hears is her husband casually discussing the exact timeline of her death, the fake pregnancy, the sedatives, the staged car accident, and how nicely her company will transfer into his hands once she's gone. Just like that, every single sweet memory gets body slammed into the ground. The baby she cried over? Fake. The pill she trusted? A trap? The marriage? A business acquisition with extra candlelight. And suddenly, Elena is not standing outside a study anymore. She's standing at the funeral of her own innocence. Now here's the life lesson that hits hardest in this part. The most dangerous enemy is not always the one who looks cruel. Sometimes the worst enemy is the one who looks useful. Victor looked like safety. He looked like support. He looked like a man stepping in to help a grieving young heiress carry a burden that seemed too big for her, but in reality, he was the architect of that burden. He made her feel weaker so he could keep playing the hero. That's why her awakening feels so violent. It isn't just that she learned she was betrayed. She learned she was trained to ignore herself. And once a person figures out that someone has been shrinking their confidence on purpose, something flips deep inside. The tears dry up. The fear doesn't disappear, but it sharpens. It gets organized. It starts making plans. And Elena, she starts moving differently immediately. No dramatic screaming, no sloppy confrontation, no scene where she begs Victor to explain himself. Absolutely not. She flushes the pills, raids the study, photographs the documents, packs a bag, grabs cash, and disappears before her husband can even suspect the game has changed. That's when she levels up from victim to threat, because now she knows the truth, and truth in the hands of a desperate smart woman is way more dangerous than any loaded gun, but she also knows one more thing. She cannot beat a man like Victor by staying soft, confused, and alone. So she does something risky, maybe even reckless. She reaches out to Adrian Keller, Victor's longtime rival. And let's be honest, everybody watching this story knows Adrian is not some glowing angel descending from heaven. That man walks into the plot like danger wearing cologne, but Elena doesn't need a saint, she needs a weapon. That is lesson number 2. Survival is rarely clean. People love pretending there is always some noble, harmless, morally perfect path through disaster. There isn't. Sometimes survival means using the only door that is open even when it leads into another room full of wolves. Elena doesn't trust Adrian because he's good, she trusts him because his greed is visible, and visible greed is easier to work with than fake love. So she makes the deal. Help her destroy Victor, and Adrian gets a shot at the company afterward. Cold? Yes. Smart? Also yes. Elena is done playing fairy tale wife. She is now in her war era. Then the story goes full pressure cooker mode. Elena returns home and starts acting her heart out. She smiles at Victor. She signs what he puts in front of her. She lets him think the pills are still working. She lets him believe she is tired, foggy, manageable, and still hopelessly in love with him. Meanwhile, Adrian's people gather evidence, expose the fraudulent doctor, track the money, and line up the trap. And the whole time Elena is learning. That's the key. She's not just hiding, she's studying, she's watching how power moves, how men lie, how companies are stolen, how reputations are weaponized. Every fake smile Victor gets from her is bought at the price of his future collapse. He thinks he's feeding her poison. In reality, he's feeding her information. Then comes the boardroom scene, and wow, this is where Elena stops being prey for good. She walks into her father's company wearing strength-like armor, sits at the head of the table, and publicly rips Victor's whole empire of lies into confetti. The fake pregnancy, the sedatives, the murder plot, the forged legal trail, the theft, all of it comes out under bright corporate lights. And Victor, who thought he was about to inherit everything, suddenly becomes the entertainment. His face cracks, his control evaporates, his allies panic, and the room watches in horror as the man who built his future on Elena's grave realizes she climbed out of it early. That's not just revenge, that's symbolic annihilation. But the story still isn't done, because just when Elena starts looking like she has finally escaped one monster, the plot twist drops. Adrian, the man who helped save her, has his own blood-stained history with her family. He wasn't just a savior with sharp edges, he had helped shape the ruin that made Elena vulnerable in the first place. And this is where the story gets really cruel, because it forces the audience to accept that not all rescues are pure. Some people help not because they are good, but because your survival serves their unfinished war. Elena could have shattered there. Most people would. Instead, she does something even more frightening than revenge. She adapts again. She doesn't forgive easily. She doesn't collapse into romantic nonsense. She doesn't hand over her company or her future. She takes control. She renegotiates. She learns the business. She rebuilds the board. She fights the Castellanos. She keeps the company. She makes guilt pay rent. And in the end, her biggest victory is not Victor's prison sentence or Adrian's confession. It's the fact that Alana becomes impossible to own. That is the real life lesson. The comeback is not just about exposing the liar or punishing the villain. The real comeback is becoming so awake, so skilled, and so hard to manipulate that no one ever gets to rewrite someone's mind, body, and future again. Elena wins because she stops asking to be protected and starts making herself untouchable.